The city of ruins stretched out like a giant jigsaw puzzle, cracked and incomplete, the pieces scattered across the barren land. Max squinted against the harsh light of the midday sun as he trudged across what used to be the main street of a city now abandoned by time, nature, and humanity. Graffiti-covered walls rose like towering monuments, offering no clues as to what had once lived here. Broken glass crunched beneath his boots, a crisp, uncomfortable reminder of just how long it had been since anyone had bothered to clean up. But Max wasn't here to admire the urban decay. He was here for supplies. Food, water, anything he could scrounge together. The world had gone quiet years ago, and in the years since, Max had learned how to navigate the empty cities, finding remnants of a forgotten world. It wasn't glamorous, but it was life. And Max? Well, Max had a way of making the most out of whatever he found. That he was a scavenger, one of the few humans still roaming the wasteland. Others had either perished or taken shelter in the remnants of humanity's old strongholds, but Max? He was a survivor. He had to be. He wasn't much of a fighter. Didn't have that in him. But when it came to getting out of tight situations, Max was a damn expert. And right now, he was good at not getting caught. That he sidestepped another broken sidewalk, noting the deep grooves in the concrete where something had torn through it, something big. Really big. Max squinted, his curiosity piqued. As much as the city seemed abandoned, there were still signs of life here. Strange ones. And that was enough to keep him moving. The sun beat down on him, and sweat trickled down his forehead. His stomach growled, reminding him of the real reason he was here. He adjusted the straps of his pack and walked deeper into the city. It was the smell that hit him first. A faint musk, almost like wet earth, but underneath, something more, animal. Max's brow furrowed as he looked around. He wasn't the type to believe in ghosts, but there was something about this place that felt off. He continued, following the scent. It was strange, unsettling, but curiosity got the better of him. He rounded a corner, and that's when he saw it. First, he thought it was just a mirage, a trick of the light, maybe. But no. The figure was real. And as it stepped forward from the shadows, Max's heart skipped a beat. A dinosaur, not a real one, of course. At least, not a real dinosaur like he'd seen in those old documentaries. But there it was, an impossibly large, hulking figure with the body of a T-Rex and the head of, well, something that looked more human than Max was ready to deal with. The creature, no, the hybrid, was staring right at him, its large, reptilian eyes narrowing, its snout twitching like it was trying to figure him out. Max's mouth went dry. Hey there, he said, raising a hand in a gesture that was probably supposed to be friendly, though the instinct to run was practically screaming at him. The hybrid blinked, its sharp teeth flashing as it tilted its head, confusion written across its face. Then, in a voice that could only belong to something far too large to speak coherently, it grunted, "Not human," it said, and Max's eyes widened. "I'm definitely human," Max said, swallowing the lump in his throat. He wasn't sure what else to say. This wasn't what he had planned for today. "You're, not?" The hybrid snorted, an annoyed sound that rattled in its chest. It leaned forward, revealing its strange, muscular arms, almost human, but with claws that could cut through metal. "Not exactly," it replied, its voice deep and rough, as though it hadn't spoken to anyone in years. "But, close enough." Max blinked, still unsure if he was hallucinating or if he had walked into some kind of elaborate prank. But something in its eyes told him this wasn't a joke. "I'm just looking for supplies," Max said, trying to sound casual, though his voice had an edge of uncertainty. "I didn't mean to intrude." The hybrid raised one clawed hand, stopping Max in his tracks. "You're not supposed to be here," it said, a low growl rumbling from deep within its chest. Max backed up instinctively, his brain whirling. This wasn't how he expected to die, not by a mutant dinosaur hybrid. "Look, I didn't mean any harm," Max said, holding up his hands in surrender. I'm just trying to survive like everyone else. The hybrid seemed to study him for a moment, its eyes narrowing further, as though measuring him. Then, it let out a low grunt. Survive, you say? Before Max could ask what that meant, the hybrid stepped aside, gesturing with a sharp claw. Come with me, it said. You're in our territory now. Max stood frozen for a second. His mind raced. This is insane. This is really happening. I must have hit my head or something. But there was something in the hybrid's stance that suggested it wasn't up for negotiation. And after a moment's hesitation, Max decided that his best bet was to follow it. For now, they walked for what felt like hours through the deserted streets, the sounds of the city eerie and empty, save for the occasional echo of footsteps. Max tried to keep his cool, but his nerves were frayed. The hybrid led him to a large, crumbling building that seemed to have once been a government structure of some kind. The doors were wide open, as if welcoming visitors, though Max was certain no one had been here for a long time. Inside, the place was dimly lit, with dust hanging thick in the air. The floors creaked underfoot, and the walls were lined with old technology, some of which Max had never seen before. It was a strange mix of futuristic and outdated, like something out of a half-remembered dream. At the back of the room stood a small group of hybrids, all with varying degrees of humanoid and dinosaur traits. They turned to face him as he entered, their eyes filled with curiosity. Some of them were smaller than the T-Rex hybrid, but no less imposing. New blood, one of them muttered, a wiry-looking raptor hybrid with sharp, intelligent eyes. He had the body of a velociraptor, sleek and fast, but with a torso that suggested some human DNA had made its way into the mix. Not human. Another hybrid, a larger one with a spiked tail like a stegosaurus, grumbled. Shouldn't trust him. Max didn't know if he should be flattered or terrified. As he stood there, uncertain, the T-Rex hybrid who had brought him in, the leader, no doubt, stepped forward. This is Saurus, the raptor hybrid said, gesturing to the towering T-Rex. Leader of our people. Saurus nodded. You are in our territory now, human. It is not wise to come here. Max took a deep breath. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'm just trying to survive. He hesitated, then added, but I'm guessing this isn't just a random group of survivors, is it? Saurus let out a low growl, his eyes flashing. No. We are not just survivors. We are the last of the dinosaurs, reborn. Max blinked. Wait, what? We were created, Saurus said, his voice deep and rumbling. By your kind. For war. But you abandoned us when the project failed. Max's mind raced. You were created? You're not really dinosaurs? Saurus snorted, clearly amused by the question. Not really. What does that even mean? We are what we are. And now, we are trying to rebuild what your kind destroyed. Max was still processing the enormity of what he was hearing. Created? For war? And now they wanted to rebuild their civilization? Rebuild? How? Why? The raptor hybrid spoke up again. We've discovered a way to restore our genetics. To bring back what was lost. A reboot, if you will. Max swallowed, his mind reeling. You want to restart dinosaurs? But, won't that? Saurus's eyes narrowed. It will mean the extinction of your kind. If we succeed. Max's heart pounded in his chest. This wasn't just some group of mutants looking for a safe place to hide. This was a revolution in the making, a war that was about to change the world. Max's mind was spinning. He had been in some pretty bizarre situations in his life, but this? This was something else entirely. He wasn't sure what had happened to him today, but one thing was clear, the world he thought he knew was no longer the same. And these creatures, these hybrids, weren't just living in the ruins. They were planning something. Something big, so, let me get this straight, Max said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. You guys are planning on rebooting your civilization. And part of that involves wiping out humanity? Rex, the velociraptor hybrid, tilted his head. Wiping out? Perhaps. But rebooting is a more accurate term. Your kind is a threat to our future. Your kind created us. We want what's ours. And you, your species, stand in the way. Max's stomach tightened. He tried to imagine what it would be like to face down an army of mutant dinosaurs with a grudge. And you think this reboot will actually work? You're sure it won't just make things worse? Tricera, the Triceratops hybrid, stepped forward. Despite the fearsome appearance of her body, there was a calmness in her voice. We've studied it. The technology. The genetics. We can stabilize our mutations. We can thrive again. Max's mind raced. He needed to understand more. What was the device they spoke of? How did it work? He had no idea, but he knew he had to learn. Where is this device? Max asked, voice low but filled with urgency. It's located beneath the city, Sora said, his voice thick with determination. We've already begun activating it. But it requires a human genetic component to function. That's where you come in. Max's heart skipped. A human genetic component, you need me? He asked, incredulous. Why? Sora's gaze was unyielding. Your genes are stable. Ours are not. We need yours to kickstart the reboot. To stabilize us. Max could feel his pulse quicken. This was insane. How could he be the key to their survival? And how did he get out of this without ending up as some kind of human sacrifice? He tried to think quickly, tried to piece together a way to talk his way out of it. But the reality of the situation pressed in on him. These creatures, these hybrids, weren't just angry at humanity for abandoning them. They were looking for justice. And if they got what they wanted, it wouldn't just change the city. It would change everything. You really think this is a good idea? Max asked, voice quieter now. You think humanity deserves this? Rex snorted. Your kind abandoned us. You created us as weapons. And when you were done with us, you left us to die. You think we're going to just forgive that? Max didn't have an answer. How could he? He couldn't argue with their logic. He had no idea what it was like to be part of something created for war, only to be discarded when you were no longer useful, but there was something in the back of his mind that nagged at him. Something that didn't sit right. If these hybrids succeeded, if they rebooted their civilization and wiped out humanity, what would the world look like then? What would be left of the people who had survived the collapse of civilization? I don't know if I can help you, Max said finally, his voice tense. I don't know if I want to. Soros took a step forward, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath Max. You will help us. You have no choice. Max swallowed hard. He didn't like being backed into a corner, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the future. Let me think about it, Max said, his voice low. Soros growled, a low rumble that seemed to come from the depths of his chest. You don't have time. The device is already activating. You will help us, or we will take what we need from you. Either way, your involvement is required. Max knew that negotiating was useless. He had to make a choice. And fast. You said the device is under the city, Max said, trying to buy some time. Where exactly? Rex, sensing Max's hesitation, spoke up. It's in the old military complex. The one at the heart of the city. That's where they kept us. Where they experimented on us. We've cleared it out, but we still need to make the final adjustments. Max nodded slowly. The military complex. It didn't take a genius to figure out that this place was more than just a hiding spot. This was the place where it had all started, the place where these creatures had been created, and where they were now trying to finish what had been left undone. The idea of helping them, of enabling their plan, was terrifying. But at the same time, there was a part of him that understood their rage. He could see why they felt they had no other option, but he couldn't ignore the part of him that screamed this is wrong. There had to be another way. So what happens after you reboot your civilization? Max asked, his mind racing. What does the world look like then? Saurus's eyes flashed with an intensity that was almost too much to bear. We will be the rulers. The earth will be ours again. We will no longer be monsters, forced to hide in the shadows. We will take back what was stolen from us. Max looked around at the other hybrids. Some were watching him, their eyes filled with hope. Others, like Rex, had a cold, calculating look. These were creatures who had been wronged, but they weren't just looking for a place to survive anymore. They were looking for power. Max's hand trembled as he tightened his grip on his backpack. He had to get out of here. He had to find a way to stop them before it was too late. I can't help you, Max said, his voice firm now, though it cracked with the weight of the decision. I won't. Saurus's eyes hardened. Then you will die. Before Max could react, the room seemed to explode with movement. The hybrids lunged at him, faster than he could react. He ducked instinctively, scrambling backward as claws raked through the air where he had just been standing. His heart raced. He had to think. Fast, Max darted for the door, but Rex was already there, blocking his escape. You can't run, human, Rex hissed, his claws gleaming in the dim light. You're part of this now. Whether you like it or not. Max's mind was a whirlwind. He couldn't take them all on. And even if he tried, what would be the point? The hybrids were too powerful, too fast. He was no match for them. But there had to be another way. There had to be a way to stop them without ending up as their next meal. And then, in the chaos of the moment, he saw it. A small opening in the wall. A way out. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Max made a split-second decision. Without thinking, he bolted for the gap, ducking low as Rex lunged for him, just missing his back by inches. The sound of claws scraping against metal echoed in his ears as he squeezed through the hole and into the darkness beyond. He didn't know where it led, but at that moment, it didn't matter. He was running. Running for his life, and he wasn't going to stop until he figured out how to stop the dinosaurs from rebooting their damn civilization. Max ran, his breath ragged in his chest as his feet pounded against the crumbling floors of the old military complex. The sound of pursuit was growing louder, the heavy footfalls of the hybrids echoing through the concrete corridors behind him. His heart was in his throat, and his mind was working overtime. Every step was a risk, but stopping wasn't an option. He pushed through a narrow hallway, his eyes darting around for any sign of an exit or something he could use to slow them down. The walls around him were lined with rusted, forgotten equipment, old files, and pieces of technology that had long since lost their purpose. There was nothing here that could help him. Nothing except his own wits. Max's mind raced as he tried to think. He had made it this far by being quick on his feet, but he needed a plan. If he just ran blindly, they'd catch him. He knew how fast they were. How strong. But he couldn't just give up. He had to stop them. He had to stop whatever they were planning. As he rounded another corner, he found himself in what appeared to be an old control room. The walls were lined with more technology, but it was all dusty and half-functional. He didn't have time to understand it, but there was a large control panel in the center of the room. Maybe he could use it. Maybe he could find a way to sabotage the device they were planning to use. Max sprinted toward it, his mind fixated on the idea of stopping the device. His fingers flew over the dusty buttons, but nothing seemed to respond. Of course. Everything here was ancient. Nothing worked the way it was supposed to. Behind him, the sound of approaching footsteps was getting closer. He could hear Rex's snarl, low and predatory, and the heavy breathing of Saurus. They were closing in. Max's pulse surged. He didn't have much time. He slammed his hand down on the nearest lever, hoping for the best. The control panel flickered, and then, with a loud hum, the lights in the room flickered to life. Max's eyes widened. Was this it? Had he just activated something? The hum grew louder. The walls seemed to vibrate, and for a split second, Max thought he could hear something in the distance, something more mechanical, more alive. It wasn't just a reboot of a device. It was a whole system coming back online. But then the door to the control room burst open. Saurus filled the doorway, his massive frame blocking out the dim light. His eyes locked onto Max, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "You think you can stop us?" Saurus asked, his voice thick with anger. "You are too late." Rex slid into the room behind him, his small, agile form moving like a shadow. "You shouldn't have tried to run," Rex hissed. "Now you're trapped." Max felt his heart race. He was cornered, but he couldn't give up. Not now. Not when they were so close to completing their plan. The device was already online. It was only a matter of time before it was too late. He darted for the door, but Rex was already blocking the way. Max's mind spun, but then something caught his eye, an old, rusted fire extinguisher on the far wall. It was a long shot, but maybe, just maybe, it could work. Max grabbed the extinguisher with a frantic grip, pulling it off the wall. The hybrids were closing in, their eyes fixed on him. But Max didn't hesitate. He twisted the nozzle and aimed the blast at the ground near Rex. The pressurized foam shot out in a loud hiss, catching Rex off guard. The Velociraptor hybrid stumbled backward, his claws slipping on the slick floor. Max didn't waste a second. He pushed forward, throwing Rex off balance as he darted around the hybrid, heading straight for the door, but Saurus was faster. His massive hand shot out, catching Max by the collar before he could make it through. Max's feet left the ground as Saurus lifted him up effortlessly. His heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to break free, his hands trying to pry the massive clawed fingers off of him. But Saurus's grip was iron-tight. "You should have stayed out of this, human," Saurus growled, his voice vibrating through Max's bones. "You've already made your choice." Max's mind raced. He couldn't give up. Not now. But what could he do? The device. The device was still online. If he could just get to it, maybe he could trigger something. Maybe he could overload it, break it before they could use it. "Let go of me," Max shouted, kicking his legs in desperation. He was almost at eye level with Saurus now, the giant dinosaur hybrid looming over him. "You're making a mistake." But Saurus just smiled, showing rows of sharp, yellow teeth. "I think it's too late for regrets." Max's eyes darted to the control panel. He wasn't going to make it there in time, not with Saurus holding him. But then, a flash of movement caught his eye. Velva. The female Velociraptor hybrid. She was standing just behind Saurus, her eyes narrowed as she watched the confrontation unfold. Her movements were quick, silent. Her kind had always been the most stealthy. Without warning, Velva stepped forward, her claws glinting in the light. She slashed at Saurus's arm with surprising speed, forcing the larger hybrid to release Max with a roar of pain. Max fell to the ground, gasping for air. He scrambled to his feet, his body aching from the pressure of Saurus's grip. He didn't wait. He bolted for the control panel, racing across the room. Saurus turned, his eyes blazing with fury. "You'll pay for that, Velva." But Velva didn't flinch. She stood her ground, eyes cold and calculating. "You've already decided your fate, Saurus. You're not getting what you want." Max reached the panel, his fingers flying over the switches and levers. The hum of the device was deafening now, and he could feel the air around him crackling with energy. He didn't know what he was doing, but he had to try. He pulled a lever. A series of lights flashed on the panel, and for a moment, Max thought he had done it. Maybe he had activated some kind of shutdown, but then, a loud siren blared to life, followed by a deep, mechanical voice that echoed through the building, "System failure imminent." Reboot sequence initiated. The room shook. The floor trembled beneath their feet. Max's heart skipped a beat. He had triggered something, but not what he had intended. The device was now fully active, and if it continued, there was no telling what would happen. Saurus's eyes locked onto Max. "You fool," he snarled. "You've doomed us all." Max didn't have time to argue. He turned and ran, diving for the nearest exit as the building around him began to collapse. He could hear the roars and shrieks of the hybrids as they scrambled to escape the chaos. The sound of their footsteps echoed behind him, but Max didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The world was coming down around him. But he couldn't give up. Not yet. As he pushed through the exit, into the open air, Max took a deep breath. He looked back at the crumbling military complex, the building shaking and groaning as the ground beneath it split open. The device, whatever it was now malfunctioning, threatening to destroy everything in its wake. Max wasn't sure what he had done, or if it would be enough to stop the hybrids. But one thing was certain, this was far from over. As he stumbled into the wasteland beyond, the distant sounds of chaos still ringing in his ears, Max knew that whatever happened next, he had to keep moving. The world was changing. And he had a role to play in its future, whether he liked it or not.